Welcome to American National Government. In this course, you will discuss the purpose, structure, and evolution of United States government.
I'm Jordan O'Connell, History and Government instructor at Northeast Iowa Community College. This lecture distills a decade of my written notes taken from American Government Roots and Reform, American Government by Lenz and Holman, and our course-assigned OpenStax American Government textbook. This lecture focuses on social programs, entitlements, and eligibility rules. The core question is this: who qualifies for public help when entitlement rules promise security, but eligibility formulas, work tests, and budget politics sort citizens into deserving and undeserving categories? The core competency is to cite examples of the expansion of social programs since the Great Depression. Who qualifies for public help when entitlement rules promise security, but eligibility formulas, work tests, and budget politics sort citizens into deserving and undeserving categories? The conflict moves through eligibility formulas, payroll taxes, state administration, case files, work rules, and the hard line between insurance and welfare. Social programs begin with a moral claim and then immediately become paperwork. A nation says older people should not face destitution after a lifetime of work. That becomes payroll taxes, earnings records, benefit formulas, trust funds, eligibility ages, disability determinations, survivor benefits, and annual statements. A nation says poor families should receive medical care. That becomes income thresholds, state plans, federal matching rates, provider reimbursement, enrollment systems, managed care contracts, and renewal forms. Compassion without administration is a speech. Administration without compassion becomes a maze. The civic problem is that social programs ask what citizens owe one another through government, but they answer through eligibility rules. Who counts as old enough, poor enough, disabled enough, unemployed enough, sick enough, deserving enough, documented enough, or connected enough to receive help? Every answer includes some people and excludes others. Every benefit requires funding. Every funding source creates a taxpayer. Every taxpayer becomes part of the argument. The welfare state is the set of government programs that provide social insurance, assistance, or services to reduce insecurity. Social insurance programs often tie benefits to work history, payroll contributions, age, disability, or unemployment. Means-tested programs tie benefits to income or financial need. Entitlement programs provide benefits to people who meet legal criteria. That word does not mean spoiled. It means the statute creates a legal claim for eligible people. The Social Security Act of 1935 anchors the argument because it made economic security a permanent federal responsibility during the Great Depression. Later, Medicare and Medicaid in 1965 placed healthcare near the center of federal domestic policy. The question is not whether social programs are kind. The question is how they define need, distribute cost, preserve dignity, limit fraud, avoid dependency, and survive demographic pressure. Before the New Deal, economic insecurity usually landed on county poor relief, city almshouses, churches, mutual aid societies, fraternal orders, employers, and families. Civil War pensions had shown that the federal government could run a large benefit system for a favored population, but there was no universal national guarantee against old age poverty or unemployment. Mother's pensions, state relief boards, and private charity varied sharply by locality, race, and fiscal capacity. When the Depression collapsed banks, farms, wages, and jobs, those scattered systems broke under national strain. Franklin Roosevelt and Congress wrote the Social Security Act in 1935 under that pressure. Title II created old age insurance funded through payroll taxes. Title III supported unemployment compensation through a federal-state structure. Title IV created categorical aid such as assistance to dependent children. The design tried to separate earned social insurance from stigmatized poor relief, but it also embedded political compromise directly into eligibility. Domestic and agricultural workers were excluded from the original old age insurance structure because Southern lawmakers and existing labor systems resisted a broader national obligation. Those exclusions were a governing choice, not an accounting accident. A statute can promise security while drawing categories that protect white industrial workers more reliably than black farm workers, domestic workers, or irregular laborers. Administrative capacity also shaped coverage. A payroll tax and records model worked best for workers already visible to formal employers and federal paperwork. People outside that record-keeping system faced weaker protection from the start. The Great Society widened the architecture in 1965. Medicare built a national health insurance entitlement for older Americans and some disabled beneficiaries, using payroll financing, hospital insurance, physician payment systems, and later prescription drug rules. Medicaid used federal matching money and state administration to cover eligible low-income populations. That split still shapes politics. Medicare looks national, earned, and broadly middle class. Medicaid looks poorer, more conditional, and more vulnerable to state-level restriction even when the federal government supplies much of the money. Later reforms kept changing the gate. Aid to families with dependent children became temporary assistance for needy families in 1996, shifting from open-ended entitlement logic toward block grants, work rules, and state discretion. Food assistance, disability programs, housing supports, refundable tax credits, and child benefits each built a different answer to insecurity. Social policy, therefore, turns on design choices more than slogans: insurance versus assistance, universalism versus targeting, federal administration versus state discretion, cash versus in-kind support, access versus fraud control, and immediate relief versus long-term fiscal endurance. Older Americans sit at the center of Social Security and Medicare politics because they vote, organize, and depend on predictable benefits. Social Security converts work records into retirement, disability, and survivor benefits. The Social Security Administration tracks earnings, calculates benefits, determines eligibility, issues payments, and handles appeals. A formula that looks technical carries moral and fiscal choices. Replacement rates, retirement ages, cost of living adjustments, taxable wage caps, and disability standards all shape who receives how much and when. Workers fund Social Security and Medicare through payroll taxes, which make social insurance feel earned. That financing structure builds legitimacy, but it also ties program pressure to demographics. If retirees live longer and birth rates fall, fewer workers support more beneficiaries. Congress can raise payroll taxes, adjust benefits, change eligibility ages, alter tax caps, borrow, or accept trust fund strain. None of those choices is painless. The politics are sharp because current beneficiaries fear cuts, younger workers fear future insolvency, and elected officials fear touching the third rail. Unemployed workers face a different administrative system. Unemployment insurance requires people to qualify under state rules, document work history, file claims, certify job search or eligibility conditions, and navigate state systems that vary in generosity and speed. During recessions, claim volume can overwhelm outdated technology and thin staffing. A benefit meant to stabilize households can fail if the website crashes, the call center cannot answer, or fraud controls freeze legitimate claims. Implementation is not a footnote, it is the program. Medicare carries healthcare complexity. The program must pay hospitals, physicians, plans, drug providers, and other medical actors through rules that most citizens never read. Payment formulas influence provider behavior. Coverage decisions shape treatment access. Premiums, deductibles, supplemental plans, and prescription drug rules affect household finances. A program for older Americans therefore becomes a giant administrative relationship among beneficiaries, providers, insurers, contractors, regulators, and Congress. Medicaid exposes federalism under stress. The federal government sets broad rules and supplies matching funds. States administer programs within federal requirements. State choices affect eligibility, enrollment, managed care, provider payments, and access. This can allow local adaptation. It can also produce unequal citizenship by state. A low-income person may receive different access depending on residence. When health policy relies on state implementation, federalism becomes a bedside issue, not a textbook diagram. Federal matching formulas also change state incentives. A state may expand coverage when Washington covers a larger share, or tighten administration when state budgets strain. Governors, legislatures, hospitals, nursing homes, managed care companies, and patient advocates all fight inside that financing structure. Means-tested programs face the burden of verification. Agencies must prevent fraud and target need, but every verification step can block eligible people. Proof of income, residency, household composition, work status, assets, citizenship, disability, or caregiving responsibility may appear reasonable on paper. In practice, paperwork can punish people with unstable housing, limited internet, language barriers, irregular work, disability, trauma, or lack of transportation. Recertification creates another gate. A person may qualify in January, miss a notice in June, lose coverage in July, and spend months trying to restore a benefit that the law still says they deserve. A program can save money by making access hard, but then it may fail its purpose. Taxpayers carry real pressure too. Social programs require revenue. Payroll taxes reduce paychecks. Income taxes fund public commitments. State budgets absorb Medicaid costs. Deficit financing shifts cost into debt. Critics are not automatically cruel when they ask about sustainability. Supporters are not automatically naive when they defend security. A serious debate must name the program, the population, the benefit, the funding source, and the trade-off. Eligibility rules also create administrative burdens before benefits arrive. Applicants may need proof of income, age, disability, family status, work history, residency, or medical condition. States may add forms, interviews, renewal deadlines, and data matches. A program that looks generous in statutory language can still exclude people through paperwork, waiting periods, office hours, or verification systems. The Social Security Act entered the statute book on August 14, 1935, with Congress and Roosevelt trying to turn mass insecurity into permanent federal obligation without using the language of open-ended dependency. The wording shows that tension. Title II promised old age benefits. Title III backed unemployment compensation. Title IV created aid to dependent children. Each phrase narrowed the promise into an administrable category. Congress was not writing mercy in the abstract. It was deciding which risks would move onto federal ledgers, payroll systems, state agencies, and benefit rolls. The ink also records the exclusions. Domestic and agricultural workers sat outside the original old age insurance machinery because lawmakers wanted a narrower payroll base and because the racial labor order of the South still had veto power inside Congress. The statute built dignity for many wage earners while withholding the same security from millions whose labor was just as necessary. That is what tactical source reading looks like here. The category line is where the moral claim shrinks into a political bargain. The same tension survives in later health and anti-poverty programs. Medicare made age and disability the gate into a national payment system. Medicaid made poverty and categorical eligibility the gate into a federal-state bargain with different reimbursement rates, enrollment rules, and provider networks. A government can promise care and still force people through redeterminations, managed care paperwork, asset tests, disability reviews, and renewal deadlines. Protection and surveillance travel in the same administrative file. Social programs also create durable constituencies, retirees, hospitals, nursing homes, disability lawyers, state human services agencies, pharmacies, advocacy groups, and governors all master the machinery and defend it. That durability can shield vulnerable people from abrupt abandonment. It can also freeze flawed design in place when demographics, labor markets, or budget conditions change. The unresolved source tension is therefore severe. How much security should government guarantee before the paperwork, tax burden, and political lock-in become another form of exclusion for someone left outside the gate? Social programs cannot be judged by intention alone. Intention counts, but design decides whether the program works. A program may aim to protect dignity and still exclude eligible people through paperwork. A program may aim to prevent fraud and still waste public money through poor oversight. A program may aim to reward work and still punish caregivers, disabled people, or workers in unstable labor markets. A program may be popular and still face funding strain. The sharpest comparison follows the machinery. Social Security uses work records and payroll tax legitimacy. Medicare uses age and disability categories inside a national health payment system. Medicaid uses a federal-state partnership and income eligibility. Unemployment insurance uses state administration and work history rules. Food assistance, housing aid, tax credits, and disability programs each define need differently. The design reveals the value and the exclusion at the same time. The strongest answers will compare programs through machinery. Social Security uses work records and payroll tax legitimacy. Medicare uses age and disability categories inside a health payment system. Medicaid uses federal-state partnership and income eligibility. Unemployment insurance uses state administration and work history rules. Food assistance, housing aid, tax credits, and disability programs each define need differently. The design reveals the value. The unresolved judgment is severe. Should social programs prioritize broad security even if costs rise, targeted assistance even if paperwork excludes people, or fiscal restraint even if private hardship grows? No serious answer escapes trade-off. Once the eligibility rule, the funding source, the administering institution, and the people outside the gate come into view, the argument is no longer about compassion in the abstract. It is about which exclusions a republic will write into law and keep enforcing. The unresolved question is whether social programs can deliver dignity while sorting human need through eligibility gates.
If you're curious how I'm using AI to build these lectures and reshape higher education, visit thelibertytolearn.com. I'll see you in class.